Welcome, everybody, to another Alchemy Mondays. This is episode 2. I got my co host Eros Up with me. Go ahead and tell them where they can find you, Eros.
You can find me on Twitter at Eros to Ethos, and you can find me on YouTube at Eros Up.
All right. And you know where you can find me. That's why you're here, if there's anybody here. But today, we want to go over a little bit of what you're going to need for the process of alchemy. And we'll go over some of the stuff, and we're going to get into the text. So, right here, I'm going to just take myself completely off. Well, actually, first, screen cap this. All right. So that's what we're going to be working with. Alchemist Handbook by Frater Albertus, right? Also, The Forge and the Crucible, The Origin and Structure of Alchemy, right? And Spagyrics. I haven't gotten that one yet. It is ordered. It will be there soon. And the equipment is a 100 milliliter Soxolite extractor kit, a water pump. You're going to need that for the Soxolite, and a hot plate and luting grease for all the glass work that you have to use. That's important. Usually when you buy a Soxolite extractor, it comes with luting grease, but you want to have plenty left over because you don't want to get these things stuck together. You can't clean them out. And you're going to need to clean these things out. Cleaning them out is a process. And you've got to have the right equipment for that. So definitely keep on hand some pretty heavy-duty cleaning stuff that can get inside of the laboratory equipment, because if not, you're going to get a bunch of stains and stuff you're not going to want in there. But that's basically all you need for the laboratory portion, right? I bought extras like a vacuum seal for it so that I can start to, extract herbs at a much lower temperature than normal, because the rule is pretty much if you can smell the herb cooking, you're losing a lot of the chemicals. So what you want to do is you want to lower the pressure inside of that container so that it takes less temperature to get it up to the boiling point, so that you're not burning this stuff off, right? So this is where we are at. All right. Thank you for coming. So yeah, that's what we got so far. If you guys don't know what a Soxolite is, go ahead and look it up right now. You're going to love it. Just looking at it, you're going to love it because it looks like the classical, laboratory equipment that you would associate with this sort of thing. And it's just an extractor kit. So it's going to do this constant reverberation of alcohol through your sample to take all of the essential oils out of it. So
I have to look it up myself.
You going to share your screen since you're looking it up?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, I guess it looks like this guy.
Yeah. It's so hard to zoom on these Google pages, right? So you can see in the little animation right there how it works. It goes up, it hits that little point, and then it all floods back down and does it all over again. So it's this circulation process. It's fun to watch. This is also part of the meditation. So having some sort of way of visualizing the process that's taking place within your spagyric is important for understanding and being able to put your consciousness into the sample and sort of doing it that way. So we were discussing earlier about maybe coming up with that alchemy tracking app using all of the different types of, obviously further down the road, but there can be a lot of benefit from this. But basically you're combining laboratory work meditation, and also physical activity, physical exertion. Again, we have to do a whole lot less of it than the ancient alchemists did because they had to make each and every one of their own containers. Right? So as they're making these things out of glass, they had to know so much to get to the point of actually doing these extractions and then going into the different fields of study like plant alchemy, mineral alchemy, and all the rest of it, that there was a massive front loading of knowledge that had to go into it, which was part of the process back then. But we got done with the forward last time from Israel Regardi. We're going to go over the preface to the first edition. This little volume has been prepared under great difficulties due to the immense scope of the subject matter and the consequent necessity of abbreviating so much valuable material. And yet it is almost impossible to condense the presentation of arcane knowledge without running the risk of causing greater confusion in the reader's mind. For the neophyte on the path, alchemy undoubtedly represents the great quest. To help ease somewhat the commensurate of its study, the contents of this book, in the author's opinion, represent an aid in the form of an essential yet simple outline for the pursuance of practical laboratory alchemy. Whoever cannot comprehend what follows has no alternative but to forget the whole matter for the time being. I sense the rebuff awaiting for me from the students of the abstract sciences and their accusation of empiricism for presenting this work. However, this does not justify an apology on my part, for what has been set forth in these pages represents an honest conviction based on practical experimentation in a university laboratory, as well as extensive tests and investigation in my private laboratory, originally founded on a firm belief in the truth to be discovered in the concealed teachings of the alchemists, especially those of Paracelsus, Bacillus, Valentinus, and the authors of the Collectina Chemica. The ushering of this atomic age should have made it comparatively easy to lay aside some of the prejudices which were previously held, yet they are still partially sustained by an incongruous criterion. Why is it so unreasonable to assume, casting aside the overwhelming percentage of charlatans and impostors who call themselves alchemists, that men such as Paracelsus and Valentinus did speak the truth about their discoveries? Is it because of what may seem an absurd terminology intermixed with metaphysical symbolism? Suppose then that this represents one of the main arguments. Red lion or peacock's tail become therefore impossible childish nonsense for the simple reason that in the current technical terminology, word combinations such as tetraphenylethyl dichloride are standard expression in the world of science. Similar letter and number combinations are no puzzle to one initiated into the marvels of chemistry. When such a term as tetraphenylethylene dichloride is expressed by means of its chemical symbols, such as, can you see the formula? So what he's trying to say is that if that doesn't mean anything to you, then you're not alone. You have to be initiated into the whole chemistry field for you to have any understanding of tetraethylene, blah, 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 blah. And what he's saying is that maybe these highfalutin chemists with all their degrees don't know a lot about things like the red lion or the tail of the peacock being talked about in these other works. So for them to be casting aspersions on people like Paracelsus, the father of pharmacology, would probably be an ill-fitting match, right? But again, you can lead a scientist to water, but you can't make him think.
What is the peacock tail thing, though?
I think you would probably have a better chance of explaining that to us since you got all of the Paracelsian works on your PDF drive there.
Okay, I'll look into it.
It's been a while since I've read Paracelsus, but this makes sense to the chemist, however, To the layman, it represents a meaningless scramble of letters and numbers. The chemical terminology likewise conveys no meaning to him. Valentinus, who Paracelsus shares fame as the father of modern chemistry and medicine, writes about himself. Though I have a particular style in writing, which will seem strange unto many, causing strange thoughts and fancies in their brains, yet there is reason enough for me to so doing. I say enough that I may remain by my own experience, not esteeming much of others' uh, uh, parroting, because it is concealed in by knowledge, seeing having otherwise the preeminence before hearing, and reason hath the praise before folly. To the scientist, this may smack too much of empiricism and will be disparagingly discarded by him. So, for the same reason that you would cast out alchemy, people cast out chemistry simply based off of the fact that they're not fully understanding either terminology. So, you have to kind of dig in before you can toss. Dig in and then toss. That's the key. Is it really so unreasonable to accept the symbolism and word combinations of the alchemists of the Middle Ages in the same light that we now take for granted the assertions of science? The foregoing certainty deserves an honest answer. In the following pages, my hypothesis become evident to the reader. May they represent an attempt to keep the torch gleaming in these times of Stygian darkness. Centuries ago, the flame was lighted by alchemists whose names eventually will be honored by the children of those now making vain efforts to ridicule them. It is anticipated that this handbook will not see an enormously large edition, since only a few may want to own a work on a subject which has fallen into such ill repute. Yet those who have tried for some time to start experimentation in their laboratories in order to discover if there really is such a truth to be found in alchemy will find welcome and perhaps valuable help in its contents. There is no doubt that the author's mind, that serious and prepared students can accomplish what is outlined in these pages. Many years have elapsed since the writing of this present manuscript. After due deliberation, it has been considered timely now to handle it in the printer, so that others may benefit from it. May it become what the title indicates, namely, a handbook for alchemistical novices. Right? And so this is his preface to this current edition. I kind of feel like I read the foreword by Israel Regardi. So next time we're going over chapter 1, Introduction to Alchemy, out of this book, and I've also got The Forge and the Crucible. But I think you've got one by Paracelsus that we can read a couple chapters out of. If you wanted to.
Yeah, we could do that.
All right.
You want to do it now?
Sure.
Could just read the first section.
All right.
Oh. All right. We'll do our best. All right. Let me share my screen.
I'll pull up the list again. If you guys haven't got it, write this down. Alchemist Handbook, Frater Albertus. Obviously, that's what we've been reading from. Forge of the Crucible, The Origin and Structure of Alchemy, and Spagyrix. The second one is more about the history of alchemy and sort of the cultural implications. It's more of like anthropological view on alchemy. And then Spagyrix, which is another practical book that comes out of Utah, just like Frater Albertus does. So it's sort of a a continuation of that same tradition going on out there in Utah with alchemy. For some reason, Utah is a hotbed for this stuff. There we go.
Yeah, I'm just opening this. Well, window. Oh, well.
You got a pop up.
Yeah. I was going to try to open it in reading view. I don't remember how to do that. But this works.
All right.
Okay. So, Paracelsus, apparently really important guy for alchemy. And this is one of his writings, the book concerning the tincture of the philosophers by Paracelsus. So, yeah, let's just read through the preface. Seems pretty theatric.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Paracelsus is a quite flamboyant dude.
All right, I dig it. Since you, O sophist, everywhere abuse me with such fatuous and mendacious words on the ground that being sprung from rude Helvetia, I can understand and know nothing, and also because being a duly qualified physician, I still wander from one district to another. Therefore, I have proposed by means of this treatise to disclose to the ignorant and inexperienced what good arts existed in the first age, what my art avails against you and yours against me, what should be thought of each, and how my posterity in this age of grace will imitate me. Look at Hermes, Archelaus, and others in the first age. Did I botch that really bad?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. See what Spagirists and what philosophers then existed. By this they testified that their enemies, who are your patrons, O sophist, at the present time are but mere empty forms and idols. Although this would not be attested by those who are falsely considered your authentic fathers and saints, yet the ancient emerald table shews more art and experience in philosophy, alchemy, magic, and the like than could ever be taught by you and your crowd of followers. If you do not yet understand from the aforesaid facts what and how great treasures these are, tell me why no prince or king was ever able to subdue the Egyptians. Then tell me why the Emperor Diocletian ordered all the Spagiric books to be burnt, so far as he could lay his hands upon them. Unless the contents of those books had been known, they would have been obliged to bear still this intolerable yoke, a yoke, O sophist, which shall one day be put upon the neck of yourself and your colleagues. From the middle of this age, the monarchy of all the arts has been at length derived and conferred on me. Okay. Theophrastus Paracelsus, Prince of Philosophy and of Medicine. For this purpose I have been chosen by God to extinguish and blot out all the fantasies of elaborate and false works, of delusive and presumptuous works, be they the words of Aristotle, Galen, Avicenna, Mesva, or the dogmas of any among their followers. My theory, proceeding as it does from the light of nature, can never, though through its consistency, pass away or be changed. But in the 58th year after its millennium and a half, it will then begin to flourish. The practice at the same time following upon the theory will be proved by wonderful and incredible signs, so as to be open to mechanics and common people, and they will thoroughly understand how firm and immovable is that Paracelsic art, against the triflings of the sophists, though meanwhile that sophistical science has to have its ineptitude propped up and fortified by papal and imperial privileges, and that I am esteemed by you a mendicant and vagabond sophist. The Danube and the Rhine will answer that accusation. Though I hold my tongue, these calumnies of yours falsely devised against me have often displeased many courts and princes, many imperial cities, the knightly order, and the nobility. I have a treasure hidden in a certain city called Whedon, belonging to Forum Julii at an inn, a treasure which neither you, Leo of Rome, nor you, Charles the German, could purchase with all your substance. Although the sign star has been applied to the arcanum of your names, it is known to none but the sons of the divine spagyric art. So then, you wormy and lousy sophist, since you deem the monarch of Arcana a mere ignorant, fatuous, and prodigal quack, now in this mid-age, I determine in my present treatise to disclose the honorable course of procedure in these matters, the virtues and preparation of the celebrated tincture of the philosophers for the use and honor of all who love the truth, and in order that all who despise the true arts may be reduced to poverty. Jeez. Okay. By this arcanum, the last age shall be illuminated clearly and compensated for all its losses by the gift of grace and the reward of the Spirit of truth, so that since the beginning of the world no similar germination of the intelligence and of wisdom shall ever have been heard of. In the meantime, vice will not be able to suppress the good, nor will the resources of those vicious persons, many though they be, cause any loss to the upright. That's like quite something.
Don't you love it when Paracelsus holds his tongue?
I guess I didn't realize it was a hit piece.
Oh, every one of his work starts out as a hit piece. That's what he loves to do. He's always talking bad about the establishment. He's like this sort of philosopher anarchist that's going out there just taking shots at all the rest of these German noblemen he calls, fools and sophists and all the rest of this stuff. It's great. That's
Wormy. Yeah.
While he's praising God at the same time. So he's lambasting you and praising God and doing all the rest of that stuff. Making wild hand gestures with his hands as well.
Yeah, it feels like you need a lot of history behind it, because it's like, why is he beefing with them so hard?
Well, there is, to this day, a lot of dispute over his death. A lot of people think that the medical establishment back then took him out. And then the medical establishment is like, no, he killed himself. It was a suicide. He had to do it himself. Mm. And people still go to his gravesite to receive spiritual healings to this day. So he's sort of a miracle man, which is fun. And so this is the guy that is going to be explaining the spagyric art in his words with that treatise right there after he gets done, yelling at the church. Which is why I love him.
Good for him, yeah. We love that.
Right. But let's see. The Forge of the Crucible. This is the last one. We're going to read the forward on this one, and it's going to give you a little bit of the cultural implications, I think. So the first section of this small volume presents, through the eyes of a historian of religions, a group of myths, rite, and symbols particular to the craft of the miner, smith, and the metalworker. It goes without saying that I am very much in the debt of the historians of science and technology, for their findings have proved invaluable. But my purpose in the present work has been totally different from theirs. For my aim has been to attempt to gain an understanding of the behavior of the primitive societies in relation to matter and to follow the spiritual adventures in which they became involved when they found themselves aware of their power to change the mode of being of substances, it would perhaps have been more worthwhile to study the demiurgic experiences of the primeval potter, since it was he who was the first to modify the state of matter. And these experiences have, however, left little or no trace in the mythological record. I have therefore been obliged to take as my starting point the relationship of primitive man to mineral substances, with the special emphasis on the ritualist behavior of the smith and the ironworker. The reader should not expect to find here a cultural history of metallurgy analyzing the devious ways in which it spread throughout the world and describing the myths which accompanied it in the course of its propagation. Such a history, even if it were possible, would run into some thousands of pages, but it is extremely doubtful whether it could be in fact written. The principal sources for the myths and the rites connected with metals are Africa, Indonesia, and Siberia. And these areas, whose cultural history and mythology are either largely unknown or just beginning to become known. Furthermore, there are considerable gaps in our knowledge of the history of the general spread of metallurgical techniques. Wherever possible, the historico cultural context of the various metallurgical complexes have been taken into account. But my main concern has been to pierce through the mental world which lies behind them. Mineral substances shared in the sacredness attaching to the earth mother. Very early on, we are confronted with the notion that ores grow in the belly of the earth after a manner of embryos. This is also very much shared by the alchemists of old. They believe that inside the earth, these spiritual properties from the different astrological signs and planets would enter, and then they would manifest as sort of like the seed that would grow into the metals that they would find. Miner and metalworker intervene in the unfolding subterranean embryology. They accelerate the rhythm of the growth of the ores. They collaborate in their work of nature and assist it to give it birth more rapidly. In a word, man with his various techniques gradually takes the place of time. His labors replace the work of Chronos. To collaborate in the work of nature to help her in producing an ever increasing tempo to change the modalities of matter. Here, in our view, lies one of the key sources of alchemical ideology. We do not, of course, claim that there is an unbroken continuity between the mental world of the alchemist and that of the miner, metalworker, and smith, although indeed the initiation rites and mysteries of the Chinese smiths from an integral part of the tradition later inherited by the Chinese Taoism and alchemy. But what the smelter, smith, and alchemist have in common is that all three lay claim to a particular magical religious experience in their relations with matter. This experience is their monopoly, and it is the secret transmitted through the initiatory rites of their trades. All three work on a matter which they hold to be at once alive and sacred, and in their labors they pursue the transformation of matter, its perfection, and its transmutation. These summary formulations will later be more fully and accurately expanded. But to repeat what has already been stated, this ritualist attitude towards matter involves, in one form or another, man's intervention in the temporal rhythm particular to living substances. And it is here that we find the point of contact between the alchemist and the artisan metalworker of primitive societies. The ideology, the ideology and technique of alchemy constitute the main theme of the second part of this work. We have dwelt at some length on Chinese and Indian alchemy, not only because they are less well known, but also because they present in clear form both the experimental and the mystical character of its technique. It must be emphasized that at the outset that alchemy was not in its origins an empirical science, a rudimentary chemistry. This it did not become till later for the majority of its practitioners. Its mental world had lost its validity and its raison d'etre. The history of science recognizes no absolute break in between alchemy and chemistry. The one, like the other, works on the same mineral substances and uses the same apparatus, and generally speaking, applies itself to the same experiments. Insofar as one acknowledges the validity of the investigations into the origins of science and technology, the perspective of the historian of chemistry is perfectly defensible. Chemistry was born from alchemy, or more precisely, it was born from the disintegration of the ideology of alchemy. But if we view it from the standpoint of the history of the human spirit, we see the matter quite differently. Alchemy posed as a sacred science, whereas chemistry came into its own when substance had shed their sacred attributes. Now, there must be of necessity be a break of continuity between the sacred and the profane plane of experience. I think we can leave it there, but you get the idea. Like, to the alchemist, the thing that he was working on was kind of an aspect of God. And he was able to work with it in such a way and transform it along the path of nature, as you heard Paracelsus refer to, in progression to its ultimate end. So the alchemists likened their science to becoming in harmony with nature, right? So it really was kind of a reversion back to pre-Christian times where the human being was no longer disconnected from nature, but part of it, and saw the divine in nature yet again. So it was definitely a departure from this God standing outside the universe and not touching anything unless he wanted to hurt you, to God being a part of the earth. And as we see, especially with the ancient Greeks, they called Hades Pluto because he was the source of all of this riches from the earth. And plutocracy, Pluto means riches. So the god of the underworld was the god of alchemy, producing the riches that would be used to create coins and stimulate trade and all the rest of this stuff. So
yeah, and that makes sense for like spiritual alchemy, but I think that originally when we first started doing this, like my idea of alchemy, like obviously I knew about metallurgy. Actually, it's funny because I remember my old engineering director, we all went out for lunch and he said his degree was metallurgy, and I was like, an alchemist, and he thought that was pretty funny. But I feel like most people talk in terms of like spiritual alchemy, and there's so many rituals around it, like just kind of acting out a death and rebirth. Um, so yeah, it's kind of interesting because it seems like there's a lot of different types of alchemy. I'm not sure whether you could really say that like this form that we're doing of breaking down plant material, I mean, I guess that doesn't really relate to like spiritual alchemy. Or
why are they called plants? Because they have the planetary essence. One of the things that was common to all of the alchemists, we'll get into that in that Paracelsus work, is the idea of the doctrine of signatures. So each one of these colors or shapes associated with the plants also associated back to a governing planetary entity. And that governing planetary entity is in you as well. So as you're making the plant preparation, you're actually changing the internal energy structures having to do with these different planetary forces. So it actually meshes up quite well once you kind of get around the idea that it's all just flat biology, right? It's all just on a page somewhere and somebody else has figured it out. It's more like as you're going through the process, your body, mind, and spirit is figuring it out with you, right? It's the experience that then opens up new spiritual gateways.
That makes sense. Like new patterns and new comparisons and parallels that like deeper your understanding, you mean?
And sharpen the mind. All of this stuff does both. So instead of having sort of like a hippie kind of laid back speculative angle, it's like, no, I work with these energies with my hands. I pick them from the field. I take them through the process. I separate out all their minerals and I bring them back together. I understand this stuff from the inside out. So it's less about the speculative and more about the rigid act of manipulating spirit with your hands, which is fun, I think. And
Yeah.
I also didn't get into what plant I want to mainly focus on with this session, which is going to be rosemary. So I'm going to buy a lot of fucking rosemary. Maybe plant some.
Well, like how much rosemary, like how much plant should people be getting?
Well, when we get the equipment set up and I start to measure out how many milliliters per extraction I'm going to be getting and all the rest of that, then I'll have a better understanding of the total sort of workload. But probably 3 to 4 pounds of rosemary, like pretty good trash bag size of dried rosemary plant material, organically grown, not chemically treated in any way. And I think I know the place to get some, which is down in Madison. So we might actually take a field trip here too. So that'll be fun.
Yeah,
But I
hopefully
think,
they have enough for you.
right, well, I can make that call and we could see. But this is herbalism is very important. If you're in a situation where you could be having something to relieve aches, pains, whatever, and you don't, it's on you. I mean, like the preparedness process is part of becoming a fully realized human being, right? Having everything you could possibly need at your fingertips and not focusing too much on any one thing, living in harmony with nature. This is all part of growing up that we're sort of kept back from because we live less connected lives to the earth, right? By necessity. I mean, we have the indoors and we have to work less outside to sustain ourselves. So having a little hobby that brings you back to the earth, I think, is a very important part of getting to that harmony place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we grow more and more detached from nature every year, so I don't know. This will be a cool way to connect with it.
That's why I decided to do it. But I think this is what pretty good episode length right here, about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely come back next time and have a lot more for you. I'll have the setup ready and I'll go in there and film some stuff with it. So that'll be awesome.
Exciting. Yeah. And then I guess we'll dig into chapter 1.
Yes. Chapter 1 of the Alchemist Handbook and a little bit more from the Forge and the Crucible. And we will also get into the sacred tinctures of Paracelsus. So
Cool.
it'll be a good time. Thank you for joining us and definitely share this out to your friends. If you guys are starting to get maybe the spiritual implications a little bit, I think you'll start to understand the practices, because again, this is about meditation as well. There's practices we can introduce that maybe you can download and try for yourselves. And it doesn't necessarily have to be connected to a laboratory practice, but it would help because it's going to be centered around that. So I have some experience in that department, and I'm going to try and integrate that in. So It's going to be a good time. And hopefully, you guys will enjoy a lot of the pictures and woodcuts that are associated with alchemy. We can bring some of those with us next time as well. If you find something really interesting in terms of, alchemy pictures, send them to me, send them to Eros, and we will put those up and talk about them as well. So it'll be a good time. And I'll see you on Thursday for the mailbag. I think there might be something going on tomorrow too, but I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to Nick on that.
Wednesday, there's the sacred geometry.
That's what it was. Wednesday, sacred geometry. So definitely tune in for that. And hopefully this show keeps growing and we'll get a lot of good content from these strange Soxolite extractors. Definitely check that out. You guys have a great one, and we'll see you again next time.